let's just move over now to the Nintendo stuff. There's a lot of talk about Nintendo E3 this past week. Not like necessarily news, but there were a lot of rumors going around this past week. I mean, you heard like all these different games apparently that Nintendo's going to talk about next month, which, yeah, E3 is in a month. Also, we don't know Nintendo's E3 plans yet, which is interesting because usually they would have announced that around now, if I'm not mistaken. Like usually a month out, they're like, okay, we're going to, tune in this day for a direct or something. And then 3 days of Treehouse or something like that following that. But I think, Nate, you pointed that out this past week that Nintendo usually would at least mention E3 to like their schedule by now.
Yeah, usually they give at least the date of their presentation by now. And I mean, as you said, they've been silent. So kind of wondering, but no company outside of Ubisoft has actually detailed the day that they're going to have their E3 showing. So it seems
there's a lot of organization still going on, I think, in the background, because like E3 legitimately just announced that they're going to have this app. Like this past week, they were like, oh yeah, we're gonna have an app where you like sign in and you get achievement points or something, and there's a leaderboard. So I feel like there's still organization and stuff going on in the background, like right now, trying to like figure out these time slots for these companies and how a Treehouse, for example, would work for them, while other companies are going to present as well. So whereas usually it would just be like, all right, free for all almost right after you do your presentation, Nintendo just run a Treehouse for like a good part of the week. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is we just need to see how all these companies are going to line up. And I feel like they're just trying to scramble still. Just weird because you feel like they've had a while to plan this, but it doesn't necessarily seem like it.
They haven't had that long of a time to plan it. The ESA really didn't communicate that E3 was definitely happening this year until, a few months ago. But typically a company like a Nintendo and Ubisoft and Microsoft, they begin planning really what they're going to have at E3 way back in January. January of this year, there was no clear sign that E3 was going to happen. So a lot of this is going to be scrambling, and a lot of people should be going to E3 with caution. It can be a quality 4 days of gaming news and reveals, but everything you hope for is not going to be there. COVID did cripple this industry in a major way last year. It continues to have impacts. So if people go in there saying there was no E3 last year, that means these companies are going to come in with all these big announcements to make up for it. No, they're not. They still have a schedule they have to abide by. They still have to look at, the overall output of the software that they have in the pipeline. It's going to be a nice event, but people have to kind of temper expectations. They're not just going to drop megaton announcements to make up for last year. That's not how this works. This was still an event that they kind of have put together very quickly, and it's going to be good for what they want to deliver, but it's not going to be the end all be all that people are going to hype up in their heads.
I mean, E3's basically hyped up like that every year. And very rarely is it like.
And now people, because there wasn't one last year, people are hyping this one up even more because, it's the return of E3. So that means they have to come in with, guns blazing and have this huge event. No, it's still going to be treated as, this is E3. We're going to come in and do our thing. But as we've seen other companies, you have EA say, we're not going to E3. We're going to have our own event in July. So companies still opted out.
Yeah, but did we really say
we're going to host whenever we want? We don't need E3. And some companies who will be at E3 will still have other summer events. E3 is no longer the focus
for a lot of these businesses. I mean, EA wasn't really part of it. I mean, they kind of were. They were on like a Saturday outside of E3 start date because Microsoft was supposed to be the ones that kicked it off. They're right next to it, so everyone just said, "Hey, it's E3," but they didn't really treat it as E3 necessarily.
Technically, EA in a way kicked off E3 because even Microsoft's event itself was before E3 started. E3 started on Tuesday. Microsoft was always Monday or Sunday.
Yeah. Yep. So they would just do it before like a lot of people showed up, basically, and then they'd have floor units out.
Media would be there and everything. Media would already be in town. Media would get there Friday because you'd have EA on Saturday.
Yes.
So you're already there ahead of the time, and it was just, hey, the floor opens Tuesday morning. We're going to have you come to our show. You're going to report on our news. It was just a way to kick off things, ease you into it. And then Tuesday is when the gates of hell were unleashed. And that's why Nintendo always did their direct Tuesday morning. Or when they used to have their live press conferences, they chose Tuesday morning deliberately because they'd say, our conference is done. As soon as you leave our presentation, You're going to the demo show floor. You're going to play the games we just announced and showed you. And that was part of their marketing strategy. Now with this all digital event, the fact that we don't have specific dates for a lot of these companies, it really makes you, wonder what exactly is going on behind the scenes. How much confusion is there? Are companies still kind of sitting there saying, we have a general idea of what we want to show, but we're still scrambling to even get certain games in our presentations. We might still be reaching out to companies to try to say, hey, let's use Microsoft as the example. As recently as, earlier this month, they may have said to EA, wait those 4 weeks, we'll have Battlefield 6 in June at our presentation. That's something that would have been decided months ago had this been a traditional E3.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, we've even seen some of the trailer leak out already, so we're all basically like, all right, they're just going to drop the trailer at some point at this rate. So it's going to be interesting, I think, a month from now when that happens.